Through Mr. Mayor, it is 9 a.m. If you don't mind. Sorry, the live stream and recording has commenced. You may begin your meeting.
Thank you, Madam. Of our land recognition statement, and this week the honor falls to Councilor Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Next is the approval of the agenda, and I turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the agenda for the October 18th regular meeting of Council be adopted as circulated. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any debate on the agenda as posted? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk. I guess I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not seeing any. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to item number 5, being disclosure of pecuniary interests.
And after looking at the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 6.1, tax write-off under the Municipal Act, Section 357 and 358. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Eckert, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council receive the tax written-off report from Corporate Services Department, and that Council approve the taxes written-off report in the amount of $6,322.27 as per the Municipal Act, Sections 357 and 358. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to item number 7, adoption of council minutes. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Niznik, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted, printed, circulated, and read. C-1/2023, regular council meeting, October 4th, 2023. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Wasn't picking you up.
No.
It's not on. Hello?
I've got notes saying
No.
I can't hear you on one.
Oh. Have a technical difficulty.
Let me just send a quick message to our IT department, just a moment.
Okay, perhaps I will continue and I will talk louder.
We actually can't hear you over live stream because of the mic, so just one.
Okay, so we will,
Do you want to use Wayne's?
yeah, we have another.
It's hardwired in.
Oh, they're hardwired.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'm just messaging the IT
yep,
department.
so we're gonna wait a couple of minutes until we have IT come and take a look at our
You just
sound
unfocus.
problem.
Gives you an excuse to yell at all of us.
Exactly, exactly. Okay,
Mike does this on purpose.
yeah,
Yes.
So that he can prove his worth.
yeah.
Mike's here to rescue us.
That's right.
Okay, yep, we're good. Okay, we've solved the problem simply by moving down one to the left. So we're at the adoption of minutes, 7.1. After viewing the minutes, any omissions noted by any members of council? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Madam Clerk, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item number 8 of the agenda. If there are any items in which council wishes to lift from the consent agenda, now would be the time to do so.
Okay, thank you. Again, if you want to just simply discuss consent agenda, you don't have to lift it. So, noting that, is there any item that any councilor would like to lift on the consent agenda? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item number 9, being the consent agenda. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items listed on the October 18th council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Wink.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. 9.1.1, Clerk's Quarterly Report. Grant application showed up in a couple of our reports, but could someone make comment on the Disaster Mitigation Fund 10-year stormwater management projects, $19.6 million, which is, I trust that that's not a typo, but that's very substantial. And what are the chances of receiving those funds?
So we'll go to Director of Finance, Ms. Teresa Quinlan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just like any grant, we don't know what the chances are. This is a federal grant, and what we did in our submission is that we did submit all the projects that we had in our 10-year capital plan and that pertain to the stormwater management projects. So our philosophy is, you apply for all of the ones that are applicable, and you just wait and see. So it all depends on the number of applications that they receive and the quality of the submission. A lot of work was done with Public Works and Briley and Leah to write this grant, so I think our submission is very strong, but it still depends on the number of other applicants and how they prioritize. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, because this definitely would have a major positive impact to our reserves.
Councillor?
Thank you for those comments. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other discussions? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said, we do have a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, that the consent agenda items be received and the recommendations therein be approved, and to you for a vote.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask one more time. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And none opposed. Motion carries. Back to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to item 11, presentation and consideration of reports. Our first item is 11.1.1, Eclipse Feasibility Report. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2023-0215, Eclipse Feasibility Report for information, and that Council direct staff to make any appropriate emergency preparations to obtain a limited supply of specialty glasses for operational purposes, to operate the routine Children's Day camps, and otherwise take no action to plan festivities or public events associated with the eclipse. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. I guess the one thing I have to comment on, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a staff member or to phone around to the area hotels to see just how busy they're going to be that week. And I realize a lot of this action is probably going to be taking place in Niagara Falls, but it would be interesting to know just how many, what the buildup is to this event. We do know from past experience that they have had huge crowds following this event, but that's the only thing I can say. I guess we're not going to. At the same time, we all know that Pelham, in the first part of April, is our parks are not going to be suitable to have masses standing on them. So I can understand why we don't want to put a lot of effort into seeing, bringing out crowds that are going to cause a lot of damage. It does seem perhaps I don't know, I guess at the last minute, maybe we could do something at the MCC. I don't know. I open up to council. It seems it's too bad that we're going to have this great event and then not do anything. But at the same time, sometimes not doing anything is the way to go, I guess. I'll open it to council. Any comments from members of council on this report? The report obviously is stating that we if we are going to do anything, we're going to have to throw 50,000 at the event. And any comments? I will ask, if I can, I will go down to our airport representative, Councillor Kerr. Has the airport done any studies, or because I remember you and I were talking when this first came out as public knowledge that perhaps the airport might want to take advantage, if for nothing else, parking trailers or what have you. Has the airport done any work on this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was some brief discussion about it, but again, one of the dilemmas that was brought forward was the facilities at the airport themselves are somewhat limited, especially in the area of porta-johns and other things that would be required. They just don't have the capacity to handle any kind of large volume of a crowd there because of their septic system. That has been one of the restrictions. The other one is with a change now with a facility operator and other things, it's kind of been left to the side. There were some preliminary thoughts. The comments that have been put forward, I think if we all refer back to that April presentation that was made about the types of things that were required in advance of a large event. So I guess to say from that standpoint, I don't think the airport is going to do anything in particular relative to it. Just as a side note myself, I went to Niagara Falls when there was an eclipse went through and went down to the Niagara Parks facilities, and they were jammed. But what was very interesting about it is that they were jammed, and then 10 minutes after the event finished, everybody was gone. So they had set up for it, but as part of their normal routine. So I concur with kind of what the report has put in front of us, that we'd have to rely on all kinds of volunteers and all kinds of things that for something that may be a really short-lived event per se. So I think it's a challenge at this point to allocate significant resources for something like this.
Yes.
That's my personal perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm sorry we did get a little bit off topic going to the airport as opposed to the town, and I appreciate council's indulgence in that. Any other comments on this? Council Nesnick?
Yes, thank you. Yes, after reading the report, I think it was well thought out, and folks had concurred with other smaller municipalities, and I think that's a reasonable route to take. Just keeping it low and quiet. I know as educators, we were always worried about kids looking directly at, looking directly at the eclipse when that occurred. So we used to close the blinds so that they couldn't even look out the windows, and canceled recesses, that sort of thing. So I think just making sure that the day camp is well cared for on that day would be a priority. So I'm in full agreement with the report. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments? I guess if I can project just a little bit, if we do see a vast amount of local interest, what would be the perhaps ask the CAO. So let's say January, February, the press is building this all up, and looks like everyone and the brothers coming. Is there, if we wanted to do something at the MCC, I wonder what would be the last cutoff date that we could throw something together. And I'm looking at Vicky, and she's just sort of shaking her head. Oh no. To you, Mr. CAO.
The thing is, we're planning to have the MCC going at full bore that day because we're planning to offer the PD camps. And if you were going to look at the value-added services this corporation offers the community it serves, like that, those are the things that score at the very top, because if people don't have childcare, it's a one-day event. You want to be able to, many people want to be able to go to their day jobs. And so the value proposition is really, really high for those. And we offer, and they're really high quality programs like that we get scored really well on, and people enjoy them. So like the facility is already going to be full that day with, we have to, in fact, we bring on the people who normally work for us in the summer months, typically, senior high school students and college and university students, we try to bring back for like one day employment kind of thing to run those. So, because it takes more staff than we have as our regular full-time complement, frankly. So when you take the MCC facility, or the majority of the MCC facility essentially out of commission for the day, if you will, we're not left with any good options or all the other options are public parks and public spaces. And April is the worst month. I mean, you can conceivably damage the facilities for the entire summer. If you put 1,000 people, or God help us, 5,000 people on a baseball diamond, I don't think that baseball diamond is going to be in service that summer, or the soccer pitch, or so it goes, right? We're just not really specifically equipped for this, and we try to avoid large gatherings in the spring on fertile, soft land. So we don't have a great solution to that, and also, if it's council's will that's how we proceed, frankly, you need to put money in next year's budget, because, I mean, Summerfest is a beautiful example, but that takes all hands on deck. That takes community volunteers and community groups and every single staff member, more or less, working to make that thing work. And this would be of similar size were we to try. And I don't know that we have the strength, energy, or vitality for something that large. Yet again, I think it takes everything this community has to make Summerfest run the way it does. Niagara Falls, I mean, there are already online ads for the hotels to come and stay. Niagara Falls is the best place to come and see it. You can find it, just Google online, it's there to be seen. So we don't mean to be negative or dismissive. If you pass the motion as amended, we will buy several hundred pairs of the glasses. We mean to be prepared. But frankly, the other thing to be said is April is an extremely cloudy month. there's a good chance that it'll be gray, and I mean, it'll still turn pitch black, understand, but it may not be a great event. We have no way to know, and it could, we can get severe rain or severe snow in early April. It's the beauty of Niagara. You have no, or it could be lovely. I mean, no idea. But based on the totality of that and the fact that it would take both a bunch of unbudgeted money and would be very difficult for us to pull off because we don't have an appropriate, if we were going to host people at the MCC, we'd have to cancel the PD camps. I don't see how we can do both. It's an either or proposition. The other thing we do is worth a lot to our residents, and that's why we've given you the advice we have, but we're happy to take your direction, and we'll do as you prefer.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sierra. And the only reason I'm kind of pushing for something is because I know Councillor Eckert is always up for a party. But, okay, Councillor Kerr.
Kind of following that thought, if we go back to Max Yasgur's dairy farm, which was the host of the Woodstock Festival, we might find a former dairy farmer that has land in Pelham that might want to host something like this.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not seeing any. Motion carries. Return to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 11.1.2, Centennial Washrooms Additional Budget Request. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Eckert, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive the memo entitled FAC 06-23 Centennial Park Accessible Universal Washroom Addition to Concession with additional budget request of $137,500 for information, and that Council select one of the following options to complete FAC 06-23 Centennial Park. Option 1 being to approve the additional funds of $137,500 from 2023 in-year surplus from interest revenue. Option 2 being Council cancels the project and returns the 2 grant funds in the amount of $250,000. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Obviously, when this report came to us, everyone on Council was, the least, very surprised and disappointed. I realized that this was not coming to us so late due to staff. It seemed like it was from another source that took a little while to get the tender out. But anyway, the bottom line is, as the clerk just read, we have some options ahead of us. None of them are very palatable, but we'll have a discussion and see where Council wants to go. So I open it up to Council. Councilor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that we've wanted in this park for quite some time. If we do not go ahead with this, it's still going to be at a point where we've got to put the washrooms in. The further we delay, the higher the costs. And I, quite frankly, don't like turning back around $250,000 worth of grants. And agree with the treasurer to say if we keep on returning grants, we're not going to get grants in the future. I think at this point in time, we do have to move forward with the washrooms, even though it's going to cost us a little bit more at this point in time. But I agree with option 1. My only question would be directed to the Director of Public Works. Is there sufficient time to have the washrooms completed before the December 31st grant deadline?
I will turn to the, I'll turn to the Director of Public Works, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The schedule is tight. We've lost now additional time with respect to the award of this contract. The tender did call for a substantial completion date of December 15th and completion on by the end of the year, by the time the grants are due. So again, it's weather dependent, a lot of it, right? So we're into the late fall now, and so that'll play a part with the schedule. But as of it stands right now, the contract that's in place and on the table has a complete of substantial completion by December 15th and completion by the end of the month.
So, thank you for that. What would the ramifications be to the town if we didn't hit that deadline?
I'll go back to the Director of Public Works, okay, I'm sorry, we will go to Director of Finance, Ms. Teresa Quinlan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is this grant here, like we need to have substantial completion by the end of December. And, if it goes a little bit later, the final report doesn't go out until, January, February. I think the good news story is that the majority of the building will be almost complete. So I feel confident to move forward with that and to move forward with the reporting to the grant. And I think they would be understanding if it's weather related. Grant funders do not want money back. Once they've awarded a grant, then it's not good to give the grant money back. So they normally work with us as far as, understanding if we have some hiccups. So I think that will be okay.
Councillor?
So thank you for those comments, and based on the comments from the two directors, I move that we agree with option 1 in this report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wink. Councillor Eckert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I agree with Councillor Wink's position. This is a project that has been talked about for a long time. We heard a presentation recently from different groups that use Centennial Park. It's only getting busier down there. There was a proposal, a motion put forward by Councillor Olson, I believe last meeting, to look at a number of improvements to the park. We have a request from the Pickleball Association for another washroom further down. I think to delay this project, which is badly needed, it would be a mistake on a number of levels. If we're going to do some more improvements to Centennial Park, this is probably the first thing that we should be doing. And so I would be in favor of option 1 as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? I'll go to Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 comments and questions. I knew it was on. Yep, good. On this project. Everyone knew the budget and the schedule. What I don't understand is how does a 10 by 13 accessible cinder block, 1 toilet, 1 sink, washroom with a 12-foot overhang in the front become a $387,500 project? Basically $137,500 over budget. The new town hall was $1,000 per square foot. Here we're talking nearly $3,000 per square foot. Second point I'm going to make is on April the 5th, Council directed staff to retender for architectural services. Market records indicate the Gurek, who is an experienced washroom designer, received the contract on May the 19th. September the 18th, documents were issued for tender and permitting. How does a basic design take 4 months to be completed? The third comment I have has to do with the tender documents. There's 130 pages of tender documents, plus 16 documents, many of which were just words. My preference is always to make sure there's a rendition of what the final project looks like, or a picture in the report. Every project, I ran between 4,000 and 5,000 projects over my 20-year lifetime as an engineering manager. There was always a rendition, just like the planning department always provides us with. In this report, there's no rendition. The poor contractors, in my view, had to decipher 130 pages of technical spec, 16 drawings, many of which just have words on them to come up with a design. The preliminary drawings that we have received do not give you an overall concept of what you're looking for. So to me, this design is not complete and ready to go for construction. The contractor will have to hire a whole staff of people to try and verify, and certify and meet the contract spec. That contract spec, in my view, belongs to a big building like an MCC. Based on those comments, I will not be supporting the extra $137,500 over budget. Therefore, I will be choosing option 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Go to Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is a sad sort of conundrum that we face. You know, if this was your personal home and you were building a 10 by 13 structure, adding a washroom and a sink into it, I would find it very difficult to anybody that would spend $422,000 on that. I think we've already overspent on washrooms here at the MCC. During that build, that was quite a bit of money extra that we had to put into the washrooms here. And I just cannot, in good faith, see spending that extra $137,500 of tax dollars. Meanwhile, the grants are also tax dollars, just from a different pot that we need to remember. And I just feel that it's unfortunate we only had one contractor submit, but there must be something either wrong, as Councillor Hildebrand said, in the plans that deterred other contractors from applying to do this build. But it's a simple structure. The addition of the platform out by the French fry location is a simple concrete pad with a simple structure that goes overhead. And it just does not look like this is good bang for our dollar. So I will not be supporting spending that extra $137,000.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Councillor Kerr.
Yes, I guess you always start with numbers at the beginning, and it is outlined by Councillor Hildebrand, $3,000 a square foot for a washroom. Addition is a lot of money. New builds, even for any type of, and beginning with a brand new build, I realize this is an addition going on to an existing structure, so there are some of the parameters that are associated with that, but it's not, if I remember back when the original request from some of the groups, and it was brought up that they wanted washrooms out by the pickleball courts. Well, this is not enhancing the pickleball courts to any great degree. This is an accessible washroom. They're still going to have to travel that distance to go use the washrooms one way or the other. We do have to provide accessible washrooms. I realize that. That's what's coming with the legislation into the future. We all have to be aware of that. I'm just having, similar to Councillor Hildebrand, I had a real challenge going from how something moved from $185,000 to $400,000 plus in a span of months, not years, but months. And for something that is, again, which shouldn't be a complicated construction situation, you would think wouldn't be at that level. I have a feeling, and maybe it's me, sometimes when people know that you have your feet to the fire, they have a tendency to ask for the moon at the same time in terms of the costs of things. And when they know that, oh, look, they have $250,000 worth of grant money, well, then let's just run the numbers because they've got no choice. And I sort of feel, personally, I sort of feel in that position that I'm being put in a well, if you'd only got, I have a secondary thought was, well, what happens if there was only originally, we talked about $150,000 in grants. If there was only $150,000, would it still be $430,000 quote, or would it be less? And I've been in on both sides of these challenges as a person looking for services as well as providing services. And you sort of, I know in the back of their minds, people always have, you sort of gauge what the people have to spend and how far can you push them to spend. I really have to admit that I understand it has to be done. I understand the issue of turning back grant money and things like that. I'll be honest, it's going back to the original, it's $180,000 not just 137, but now $180,000 of town of Pelham money going into a project. I mean, we talk about 137 added on. Yes, we allocate, but now we're take the true value, the true cost to the town of Pelham. My stomach just doesn't feel right about it, and that's why I can't agree with it at this point. That's just my own.
Yeah, no. Okay, thank you, Councillor Curry. All right, well, I see the Director of Finance wants to speak.
So
Please.
through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the comments that I'm hearing here. So here's my concern, that eventually we're going to have to rent. It's not just an accessible washroom that we're adding. We're also renovating the existing washrooms that are not in good shape. So if we don't move forward with this, with having grant money of $250,000 and the town is putting in $172,000, the town will be putting in 100% next time when it's due. So it'll be more than $172,000. So all we're doing here is pushing the problem into the future. So one of the grants, the $100,000 grant, is for accessibility. We received $100,000 the week after the grant was approved. So we've had that grant since March, and they were extremely excited about that. And we have other accessibility projects that we're hoping to get funded from this grant, and we won't. We won't get funded from this grant. I understand, the numbers are not the numbers that we want, but this is a huge risk to the organization here, to the town, on receiving grants. We just talked about a $19 million grant that we submitted that was a tremendous amount of work on staff's part because we really need that money and we believe in it. We send the message back to the funders that to the town of Pelham will have returned 3 grants. I'll guarantee you they're not even going to look at our application. So I'm just giving you that warning. I know it's a lot of money, but right now the risk of giving the grant money is higher than us spending this money. The money is coming from in-year surplus. We have additional money from the interest revenue from the town, and so it's not impacting any of the reserves. We have the money, and I fully support this project more on the grant side because it's going to really jeopardize our future receiving our future grants.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I'll go to, I was with Councillor Kerr. Go ahead and finish your thoughts, sir.
This is a generalized question. I know one of the challenges at the Centennial Park has been the washrooms in their current state are closed a significant period of the year. Is there intention that these could be year-round serviced washrooms so that people could access them? Or, because I know one that's happened in the spring, we've had our massive town cleanup day, and the washrooms are not open at Centennial Park for people to use, even on that day early in the season. So it's something that we're adding things, but we're also doing a severely restricted time frame. I'm just trying to find out if there's a way of making it, because pickleballs run a long period of time of the year and others, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I see the CAO.
So, Council, I can certainly inform you that we've had some lively and I think quite thoughtful discussions at the senior leadership team level about bathrooms and winter access. What I can say is you've got an upcoming budget. We can do anything provided you help us with the resourcing levels, cleaning and sending people out to bathrooms 7 days a week or 5 days a week or wherever standard we want to hit is doable, but is also not free. We have the new bathrooms here at Town Hall, and it isn't exactly clear what the expectation, the service standard expectation is. As far it's clear they're going to be open on Thursdays in Summerfest in the summer. What do we do about the winter access? Not clear on our level, and ultimately a decision to be made by council, because any enhancement is an increase to service standard, and when we change service standards, that ought to be approved by elected representatives to decide whether we're getting value for tax money. So to answer the question, we'll be happy to put it in front of you. You decide whether bathrooms are open in any of our parks, at Town Hall, et cetera, when and where, and their frequency or the hours. We certainly, there's some merit. We have some challenges in doing that with our existing resource levels, or we basically need money for people for a couple extra hours is what it boils down to, of course. That being said, I see Ms. Van Raven wants to make some commentary, and I'd be happy to defer to her. But in a fundamental way, there is a policy, there is an opportunity there. It's not free, but it is doable.
To the Director of Recreation, Ms. Van Ravensway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification. The existing washrooms are not heated. So depending on early spring events would depend on the weather and whether the winterization is reversed. We will have that issue again during our upcoming Easter egg hunt, which will now be in March because Easter is in March next year. So those are the reasons why the washrooms were not open at that time. So they basically are not heated washrooms.
Thank you. To Councillor Wink.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just want to reiterate, $172,000 is the cost to the town to get these washrooms done. If we don't do it now, that $172,000 is gonna increase exponentially. We don't have a better option at this point in time to get this done. We have to move forward with this. And I'm really, really concerned if we punt these grants back, that we're putting the town in jeopardy of future funding opportunities. And we would be doing a huge disservice to our municipality if we do not go through with the recommendations put forward under option 1. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for those. Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Teresa, for your explanation there, and to Mr. Wink. I do see that point. Is it possible that is it possible for us to communicate back to our grant funders and just say we've kind of come into this pickle, and could we get an extension on the deadline for using those funds? I'm sure it's probably something to do with their year-end budget too, that they have to look like they've used the funds. But would that be a possibility that we go back and ask them to extend it and then to slightly cancel this? Is it an RFP, PFR, RFP? Can't RFT? Thank you. Cancel this and go back, change the parameters somewhat, and then retender it out if we get that extension on the funds. And hopefully we would come back with more bidders and a more fair, reasonable expense.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'll go back to the director because those are exactly the lines I must say that I'm thinking of.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that won't work for the grant funder. They have their deadlines. They're very clear when there's an application that when they want the projects completed by. And also, we're in an open procurement process right now. And there isn't a reason why we would cancel this unless there be drastic changes to the current washrooms. Then there's no use doing that project. I mean, we're adding an accessible washroom and we're renovating the existing washroom. There isn't much more we can cut back on that. So I don't know if the Director of Public Works wants to add to that.
To Mr. Moore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So the contract is actually put together. It's a really standard contract. It's nothing outside of the norm. These contractors bid on this type of work all the time, and their standard specifications. There was complete drawings that were submitted as part of that tender document. So their scope of work is there. Following up on the director's comments, it is actually just, there's a new universal washroom, minor upgrades to the existing facilities that are there, washrooms. So scope of work to cut that back. There may be some value engineering that could be done, but it would be minor. With respect to canceling the tender and just reissuing, I think that may set us up for some issues moving down the road. Normally, if you cancel a tender, you look at changes to that scope of work that would result in a reason to reprice and go back on the market. In this particular instance, we had 15 plant takers. We got one bid, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with schedule and what efforts have to be put in to meet the completion dates on the contract. So, from my opinion, canceling and reissuing a tender without a material change in the scope of work would not be advised.
Okay, thank you for that, Director. Before I go back to council, so these are my thoughts. I've seen the plans, and I've talked to a couple of contractors, and the one contractor said that there is no way that if they didn't bid on the original tender when it was put out some weeks ago because they thought the timeline was too close. So now, here we are, we still haven't really awarded the contract. The deadline stays the same. So either way, we are going to have to ask for an extension, is what I'm being told by the people that are going to be building this, or contractors who bid on this project. So we're more or less like high-stakes gamblers here. Are we going to, the fact that we have, and to you, I'll put this to the treasurer, and I consider you to be the grant guru here. You brought this town X number of dollars, and believe me, we all appreciate that. But let's look at this grant. We have the design done now, okay? So we've taken that first step. So, and the fact that there's also an accessibility component to here. So I guess I'm going to ask you point blank, and you've already answered Councilor Nesnick, but with those two steps, the fact that we've already taken the first step, we spent the $39,000, we've got our design, is there no way, and again, I'll take your word, you don't think that if we went back and said, listen, we're council, I don't know how you phrase it, obviously you got to be upfront and honest, that we got a bid that we weren't happy with and that we thought was excessive. We've done A, we haven't gone to B to actually award the contract. Do you not think that they would give us an extra allowance, whether it be 6 months or 8 months? Whatever you say, I will take that to be the gospel. To you, to the director, Ms. Quinlan.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I haven't, so there's two grants here where we have the two, it's called stacking, and we're allowed to stack the two grants, which is very, very rare to get two grants. The accessible grant has to be spent by March 31st of 2024, so there isn't a lot of time there. I could ask, but I don't think so. You know, yeah. I think that, you know, what the Director of Public Works said, that, you know, we should be able to reach substantial completion. You know, if the building's enclosed by the end of December and we're working on the inside and fine-tuning stuff, no one's going to come and check that. Like, they're not going to come here and check that, you know, that we're doing that.
Yeah.
By the time we do the final report, it will be done. But to add another 6 to 8 months, no. That's too much.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. So picture in your mind. This is what bothers me, is that this council is here to regulate the spending of residents' money. We go down there and we spend $400,000 on a washroom. I'll tell you right now that people are going to look at us and say, are you guys crazy, unless you know the whole story. We're high-stakes gamblers here if we don't go ahead, because if we do lose the grant money, like Councilor Wink said, then 2 years, whatever we do, then we're stuck with the whole, instead of the 180,000, now we're doing 250 or whatever the reasonable price is for this 10 by 13 building with an addition on for an accessibility. Like, this is really crazy if you think about it. And again, I'm going to rant that this is why I think we should be doing design builds, but that's a discussion another day. Sorry, that's fine. So, I wasn't going to go with this, tell you the honest truth. I've had great discussions with Councillor Hildebrand, and I said, this is crazy. How can we justify this to constituents that this little building is costing us $400,000, but it's not costing us because we got the grant money. We lose the grant and then we go back, even if we do get a better price, well, we're still going to probably be paying $250,000, which is ridiculous, but that's how it goes. So I don't want to be a high-stakes gambler. I've heard from the Director of Finance, the woman who deals with grants. She deals with these people all the time, and she doesn't think that we will get a 6-month extension. It's unfortunate, but I will go with that. I got to go with her knowledge on this, and I appreciate that. So yes, I guess I came in here thinking that there was no way I was going to go with option 1. We've already dipped into reserves to do the washrooms over there, $500,000. And now we're going to be doing, and for $500,000, we got a heck of a lot better than what we're going to get here for the money we got. This is, well, whatever. It is what it is. Anyway, I guess long story short, and I'll go. Council Nisnik is next, Bob. I guess just because our hands are tied behind our backs, I will. I've changed my mind, and I will support option 1. Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. So just threw you a question to Mr. Marr. So or maybe the treasurer, would there be a savings if they canceled the concrete pad and the overhang at the snack bar? What would the savings there be? Do you know what that is priced out separately? Would that bring the cost down a little bit if we cancel that? Like, we can live without that, right? That's not part of the washroom facility. That's kind of just another nice little thing that the Lions Club was hoping for.
To the director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it definitely would decrease the cost of the overall project. I don't know what that is. We didn't ask for a breakout price. That's all included in the lump sum scope of work. So that would be something we would have to ask the contractor. But there definitely would be less scope and less cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Are you finished?
I think so. That might be an option that we could move forward with the plan for the washroom accessibility and ask him to break out that price and take that off the table. We'd have to put that into a motion, I assume. But what do others think about that? Maybe solution, or it might be so minimal that it's really not worth doing at the same, it's not worth the cost savings if it's only $20,000 or $50,000. I don't know. Just penny pinching here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I now go to Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I understand. I totally understand, Teresa, because I know I could easily, as a project, I still have all my degrees and all that stuff. I could easily pull this project off in a amount of time. The problem I see is with the spec. That spec requires a land surveyor to be out there causing this thing to be surveyed. It calls for MDS sheets with every bit of documentation. I can understand why the guy quoted so much money. There is so much red tape in this project, it's hard for me to imagine that, in my view. I know I talked to the Director of Planning. I knew that the Planning Department would cooperate in terms of getting the permits issued. We as the town are responsible for the permits on this project, and the drawings have already been issued to the Planning Department. And one of the critical paths on this project is the pre-engineered trusses. And there is one truss manufacturer I did contact that can deliver into pre-engineered drawings within a week, and trusses within a month. So we know that the materials can be supplied. I didn't know whether that was possible. The other option is just to redesign the roof to go with non-pre-engineered trusses. I mean, those are all things that engineers, and that's why I like your suggestion is if we do proceed with this in the future, we can't be going through this again.
No.
And therefore, we have to go to a design build, in my view. This to me is hard for me to swallow, like you. I can't justify what we're gonna spend, other than based on what Teresa is saying, our director is saying. That's what makes this decision so difficult.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kerr?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I guess as you, my mind has changed from my original initial thoughts of it. I understand Councillor Niznik's query relative to the overhang at the front. In the grand scheme of things, eliminating that will generate an incredible amount of ill will, and openly, because I've had phone call on top of phone call on top of phone call from the people from the Lions Club and others about that overhang and trying to get something, and the fact that it could be incorporated into this particular project. And in fact, I was at the fish fry the other night, and they said, to be very blunt, where the heck's my overhang? As I'm paying for my fish. You told us. And sort of that's one of these things. As I said, I will reluctantly, and I have to say reluctantly because of the way this process has played itself out, understanding the limitations relative to grant money. Yes, you've got to take them while you can get them. The fact that they could be stacked, to me, actually adds to mine realizing now that it's a multiple grant situation that's not common. It doesn't make it tremendously more palatable, but it's one of these sometimes you have to take the bitter pill and swallow, and recognizing we have some things that allow us to do this. I think it's important that we've had a big ask by a large number of groups for the improvement at Centennial Park, that these groups be made aware of the investment being made in the park, and that may limit future asks because we've had to spend more money on some things. That means, and I'm thinking that the asks of paving and this and a whole bunch of other things that are not cheap additions to Centennial Park. Well, okay, we did spend it on Centennial Park, but this is what it is, and we have to live with it. So I'm willing to go with, providing that there's penalties to the to the construction of it, such that we don't get euchred into a situation we can't fulfill for the grants because they have not fulfilled their side of the bargain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Back to the Director of Finance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say one thing, that as Councillor Kerr mentioned about the investment in Centennial Park, $500,000 of the pickleball courts, 100% funded by grant, was OTF. $150,000 of this grant is OTF. So so even though we have to spend $187,000 of our money here, we didn't have to spend a penny on $500,000 of pickleball courts. This is where it's the give and take. So I just think that it's important that, in these situations, you just have to balance the risk, and the risk of giving the grants back outweighs, and this is the treasurer talking, an additional $137,000 of in your money.
Thank you for putting that sugar on the pill. Okay, so any further option, or any further discussion? If not, Councillor Wink, I'll go back to the treasurer, or to the deputy clerk. What's the next step here?
Yes, thank you. In this instance, the two options have been included within the motion, so we'd be looking for an amendment to strike whatever option council is not desiring.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Wink.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to strike option 2.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Eckert, you're seconding?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion before us, duly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, not seeing any. I will call the vote on the motion to strike option 2 and go obviously with option 1. All those in favor? And any opposed? None opposed, so the motion carries. That council has, and I will say reluctantly, gone to motion one, or option one.
Thank you. That brings us to the motion as amended, and we can use the same mover and seconder. So be it resolved that council receive memo entitled FAC 06-23 for information, and that council directs staff to proceed with option number 1.
Okay.
To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, do you need a motion or a motion?
Yes, that would be the motion as amended.
Council Curry, you will move it. Council Eckert, you will second. Thank you. On this motion, any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And none opposed. Motion carries. Back to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 14, motions and notices of motion. We do have a motion moved by Councillor Eckert, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, Canberra Road rumble strips, and I understand that Councillor Eckert would like to present this motion.
Okay, Councillor Eckert, you have the floor.
Thank you. Whereas the Pelham Active Transportation Committee endorses and encourages cycling as an eco-friendly mode of transportation and recreational activity, and whereas Canberra Road is highly utilized by cyclists, and whereas rumble strips are not easily maneuvered by a bicycle, now therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to investigate the safety implications of removing the rumble strips from Canberra Road between Effingham Street and Vinemount Drive and report back to Council by December of 2023.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments you want to make at this time on your motion?
Sure, if that's appropriate at this time. The Pelham Active Transportation Committee, previous committees, and this one as well, actively promotes Pelham as a cycling destination. We are presently have been designated as a silver level of cycling in this area, and we are striving to attain the next level, which is gold. There are a number of things that the Active Transportation Committee has initiated, and with the help of Public Works, signage is going up, maps, QR codes, etc., for both trails and cycling in the town. This is part of that to improve Canberra Road. Now, the history of this is when that road was part of the region responsibility, and the region did some work there, which is, I believe, 20 years ago. Someone decided that we needed rumble strips on the south side of Canberra Road due to, I guess, the closeness of some trees and telephone poles on that side. For some reason, they didn't put any on the north side, where there is a severe slope that leads down to trees and poles and some buildings. So they only put them in on the south side of the road. I'm not a cyclist, but I can imagine trying to navigate a bicycle over those rumble strips. And because of that, they don't. They tend to come off the rumble strip. They're forced onto the road. Now, in my knowledge, I don't believe there's ever been a car that's gone off that road and hit a tree or a telephone pole on the south side of that road. There are a number of cyclists, many cyclists, who have been forced off the road because they can't navigate the rumble strips, so they come onto the road, and impatient drivers don't give them any leeway, and so the next thing you know, they're going off the road. We have had discussions with Mr. Marr, who is a member of the Pelham Active Transportation Committee, in regards to what this would cost, and I'm certainly not going to buttonhole him to make a presentation on that, but we are led to believe that the solution to this may be relatively cost effective. So that's why the PATC has asked me to put this motion forward, and I am in full agreement with their position on this. And I would ask council to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now go to the seconder, Councillor Hildebrand. And I believe you have brought this to council before.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we've talked about it before. What makes it especially dangerous for a cyclist is that the water hauling station is down there. And a number of times I've actually called Smith's Water Haulage, maybe I shouldn't be saying their name, because their trucks virtually almost knock you off even when you're on the rumble strips. And it's a very precarious area because there's not a lot of room. Even the width of the road, I'm not sure how close it is to the requirements, but I can tell you as a cyclist, that's a tough road to drive up. And tentatively, that's not on my path of driving up because it is dangerous and it's a tough spot to be. I fully support this motion, and especially if there is an economic solution, because in the past, I think the solution the Director of Public Works always gave us, it would be when they redid the road and modified it to today's standards that the solution would be achieved. Possibly he's come up with a better solution. I'll be glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hildebrand. Perhaps before I open up to the rest of council, we will indeed go to the Director of Public Works as to the removal of these rumble strips. Are you prepared to, with any further information on it at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So staff are happy to bring a report back to council for the consideration of that. I sit on the Active Transportation Committee, and it's one of their priorities they want to have addressed. I will say that there was a report brought to council, I think it was sometime in 2014, from Town of Pelham engineering staff recommending not to remove the rumble strips. The understanding was that they were placed there because of clear zone restrictions on the side of the road, on the south side of the road with respect to the hydro poles. So that's why they were put in as a safety measure for vehicles leaving the road and having those hydro poles within the clear zone of the roadway. So this is something that definitely I would be looking to hire a road safety engineer to do a review on this section of road. And then the results of that report will form the basis of our recommendations to council. And timing wise, I think the December date would work. It's not that involved of a study to get done, but definitely I would be looking to the services of a road safety engineer to provide some recommendations for council's consideration.
Excellent. Thank you for those points. Now open it up to council. Any further discussion on the motion before us? Not seeing any. I will call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. To Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second motion, being item 14.2, pertains to Councillor Olson's motion from the last council meeting, and that's being put forth today by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kerr, and I will read this into the record. This pertains to the Platform Tennis Club Facility water and sewer connection. Whereas Council for the Town of Pelham is dedicated to promoting exceptional quality of life and values its people and their experiences, and whereas sanitary sewer and water service connections were disconnected to the Platform Tennis Club facility when the old Pelham Arena was demolished, and whereas on March 22nd, 2023, Council for the Town of Pelham approved funding in the amount of $25,000 plus applicable taxes for the installation of sanitary sewer and water service to the Platform Tennis Club facility. Now therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to prepare a report reviewing the costing and time required for the two options available. Option 1 being providing services from Welland Road, and option 2 providing service from the new adjacent development. And that Council directs staff to report back to Council in Q4 of 2023. And that staff be directed to include funding for sanitary sewer and water connection to the Platform Tennis Club facility in the budget for Council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go to the mover, Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project has been before us now before, and we already had a staff report at the beginning of the year. And basically, we're asking for an update as to where we are now, because obviously it didn't proceed as forecasted for the $25,000, which was the sewer lateral and water line coming off of Pelham or Welland Road. Now I think the plan may be updated because of the subdivision may be going forward and some development may be occurring there. Because obviously we don't want to spend any more money than we have to. So that's the basis for this request. We need to update where we are so the Platform Tennis Club understands the position we're in and what it'll cost us to do this work. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I'll turn to the seconder, Councillor Kerr. Any comments?
No, I think Councillor Hildebrand has summarized it pretty well. It's really to get up to speed on where things are. We all had hoped that the subdivision or the development in there had proceeded, which might have made things a lot easier for us. But now, because of delays, like anything, there's delays on top of delays on top of delays. And then I guess in addition to this, because of additional information we've received from the Platform Tennis Club relative to their financial positions and fund requests and other things, it adds another layer to our decision-making process of helping them. So that's why I supported Councillor Hildebrand. This is just really to get us up to speed as what the latest information is, and then we can work with it from there. So everyone's got up-to-date figures.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. And I guess checking with staff, the timeline on the report is doable. I'll ask the Director of Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we can come back with something in the end of Q4.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I'll open up the council. Any further discussion on the motion before us? Not seeing any. I will call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 15, resolution to move in camera. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Niznik, seconded by Councillor Wing. Be it resolved that the next portion of this meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. Section B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or board employees. D, labor relations or employee negotiations, one item non-union. C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, one item in Ward 1. And F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, one item. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any discussion on going in camera? Not seeing any. Call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. To the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. If you just allow me a moment to stop the live stream.